You know, as our host on match days, and he really wanted to be here, and he's got a parents' night tonight, so he sent me this thing which I'd like to read. So he says, after the recent run of success and meteoric rise up the table, it's good to have the opportunity to give credit to the management and players for the recent excellent results. I'm sure that I speak for many when I say how pleasing it is to be on a strong run of form as we enter the final couple of months of the campaign. This is a great opportunity to draw a line in the sand and move forward positively in a united manner. We have so much to look forward to in the remainder of the season. Up the city. That's a great way to start. So I'll now hand you over to Paul.
Good evening, thank you for coming. Got a lot of friendly faces and familiar faces, and nice to see you all this evening. We had a busy day today at the training ground, as per normal on a Monday. So Adey and I arrived at work at 8:30 and just dashed over here from the Cliff Hill training ground. Work is every day. It seems that everyone's on a mission at the moment to do their job to the best of their ability, the players, the support staff. And we've got a very, very exciting, as Giles has pointed out, a very exciting last quarter of the season. Everyone's in good spirits. Saturday was a little bit disappointing. I felt sorry for the players, the effort they put in and the position they had themselves in. I felt sorry for the supporters. We seemed to be, I thought, robbed a bit on Saturday. I don't say it very often, but that was the consensus. But the players, really applied themselves and arrived back at work today, ready to go. So I think there's a real, at the moment, a real sort of purpose about everyone. We've got a very exciting couple of months coming up. We can't guarantee anything in football, as you know. We've got a very exciting couple of months ahead of us. We have, I think, approached this season in a very structured and healthy fashion. I believe, and you probably remember some of the interviews I gave earlier in the season, I reiterated that I thought we had a really good squad of players, one of the best we've had in a long time, and albeit half of them weren't available for a couple of months. That's nothing to do with Adey, by the way. It just happens to be here. Sorry, I'm sure that went the right way. But we've managed, I think, to pull our season back into an exciting position, and we've got real possibilities. I don't think we would have done that without the squad that we have and the support staff behind the players. The strongest group of players, support staff that we've had in 4 or 5 years. It's the first time over the last 18 months, I would say, that we've had this progress, this development, this improvement and a growing of strength within the training ground that I've seen. Probably we had 4 or 5 years of decline. Every year the squad diminishing, members of the coaching staff, support staff leaving. Every year it was getting to the point that particular summer when we had our embargo and we had a real skeleton squad and support staff. And since then, over the last 2 years, it's building again. It's the strongest we've been. I'm looking forward to that improving again next year in terms of the health of the place. And if you've got a good health and you've got good strength and depth, you've got common purpose, you've got a chance. With a fair wind, you've got a real chance to play well and keep the club in a healthy position. So I think we've got a really, really important couple of months. Thank you for turning up today. We've had, Saturday was a really good example of it. It's amazing the support we get away from home, the numbers we get, even in places like Hartlepool. Every club we go to seems to comment on, they can't believe people we have there for a club like Exeter. So I think we're well aware of what a team we have right across the board, from the trust to the trust board, to the club board, to the supporters, to the players, to the academy, to the football in the community. We've got a really, really, and I think we are, and you probably only get a feel for it when you go away to other clubs, and I meet other managers in either professional or social situations, and they all comment about our club. It's probably sometimes just too close to home to realise how strong and unusual it is. So I think we should be very proud of what we've got. But I'm here today to answer some of your questions. I know Adey's going to talk about the physio side of things, and Adey's making real progress it's not just about treating players who are injured to try and get fit for Saturday. It's about putting in process in place that develops the young players, we call it prehab, to prevent them from being injured. About putting that together, and then he's going to talk about that, and he's going to talk about how we're trying to push forward in terms of keeping an eye on the players we have and what they do, their performance, the load they take on their bodies, because using data and new technology to give us a better way of keeping players on the pitch. So he's put a lot of work in behind the scenes, and I hope that continues over the next 2 or 3 years. He's put the team himself together. So right across the board, I think it's a very healthy situation, and the word I've used quite a bit with the team is we're on a mission at the moment. We're on a mission to be the best we can be this year, despite having a really, really difficult summer and autumn, and we've just had so many things go against us. I think it's credit to the capability and the depth of the squad that we're able to get ourselves back to this point, because the squad is so important. It's not just having the number of players, it's having the ability in the squad and also the camaraderie of the players who are pushing from the reserves, pushing from the bench. We have that, and it's the best we've had in quite a few years. So that's the overview. Nice to see you here tonight. We've got 2 home games coming next week. So I think we've got reasons to be quite bullish about what we're doing. It's a shame we've got 1 or 2 long-term injuries, but as a whole, we're in a good state, I think, at the moment. We're in a good state. How are we going to do the questions, Adey? Would you like to go?
Thanks. Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is always the awkward moment when we ask for questions and everybody sits there looking very blankly. So don't be afraid. We do have a roving mic that can come to you, just so you can be heard by us all, and that there's no that there is clarity about the question. So do we have any great burning issues that somebody would like to raise a hand and start us off? If not, Adey, sorry, sir.
What's the best team you think you've played this year, and perhaps what's the best player you've seen?
Good question. Very good question. I mean, it's hard to argue with the league table. We get to a point now where the league table begins to show the strength and weaknesses. I mean, we actually do a lot of work behind the scenes looking at not just the league table, but all the stats and the information which creates those results. And Doncaster, top of the league, it's pretty obvious to say it. They're a very, very effective attacking threat, and I don't think they're the best defensive team in the league, but they're very attacking, and they probably deserve to be where they are in the league off the back of it. I'd say after that, I think it's pretty even. There's 7 or 8, maybe 9 teams who all would have in certain circumstances would have a claim for automatic promotion if you get it right. And they're all different. That's the beauty of League 2. There's so many different types of teams. I would say in terms of a player, if I was to look at a player this year, I'd say I could see that player moving to a championship club within 12 months. I probably would have picked out Cameron McGeechan at Luton. I know he's broke his leg recently and he's not playing for Luton at the moment, but he's one that I've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. He's a very strong player. I think he's done very well for Luton, so that's probably a big miss for them. He's probably the one, other than our own players of course, he's probably the one that I picked out has a real future from our league.
If there was one player, apart from one you just mentioned, in the league out of any of the teams that you want at Exeter, which one would it be?
It's a lovely question. If it were Chris, I have to say, one of the ways I look at the matches we have, look at the opposition, and I find it very difficult to look at the opposition because I'm so focused and involved with our own team, and you've got to be very careful how you answer questions like that, because I'm very proud of the players we have. I'm fully committed to them. Once you've made that decision, they're our players. We're on the same team together. So just thinking about other players to replace those players, in some way, you almost sort of being disrespectful to the players you've got. I mean, there's recruitment for the future. I don't think, whether we were to get promoted this year or stay in League 2, there won't be too many changes to the squad. We've got a really strong squad. They're developing together. There won't be too many changes going into next year. That doesn't mean there aren't good players out there, but we've got a good. It's sometimes it's about the collective, about the sum of all parts, and actually we've got a really good group. Someone asked me the other day, would you take it to a certain player, would you take that player back? We really love that player. He did well for us, we like him, would you take him back? So I said, well, I think he was a terrific player also, and we really liked him. So will you take him back? I said, well, okay, he plays in this position, attacking midfield. So which player do you want to get rid of? Dave Wheeler? No, we like Dave. Ollie? No, we like Ollie. Jake Taylor? No, we like Jake. So we went through about 7 players. Well, that's the problem. It's not just about taking another player in. It means in the business we're in, with definitive budgets, it means you've got to move someone to the side. And sometimes better the devil you know. It's a really good question, and the particular player I just mentioned, he would do really well for us, but would I want to substitute him for Ollie? I'm happy with the group we've got, and I think they're going to do really well over the next 18 months. Whether League 1 or League 2, they'll do really well. And unless I'm fantasising about signing Harry Kane or whatever, which is not going to happen, as much as I'm sure you like Devon. So I'm afraid I'm not going to answer your question. There's no one that I particularly like to sign, because by definition it sort of says. I always have a fondness for the players we've had in the past, who've given so much to us and understand this club. And when they come in, the process of them re-establishing themselves is a simple one. So bringing players back like a Ryan Harley or Jake Taylor, it's a shortcut to someone that we trust, we know was good. So I always have a fondness for those type of players in terms of, it hasn't got to be someone we've signed before, but it does make a difference. Quinn, have you got a question for me?
Yeah.
Go on then.
When will be when? Okay, come back. When will be in you?
Good try, Queen. Have a look at it. We'll come back to you in a minute. Okay. Elaine's got. While you think about it, we've got one from here from Elaine. It's coming from.
I've got one from, actually it's from my husband, but he's not here. He says, the new 3G pitch at the Cliff Hill training ground is a tremendous facility. Can you explain how you'll be using it, and why is it a good investment for our club?
Good question. It's how, well, we use it every day. So that's the first start. Something that we've bought with for a lot of money, and we use it every day. So that's the proof's in the pudding. It not only enhances our daily work at first team level, but probably between the months December, January, February, March. So there's 4 months in the winter season. It enhances our training, because we're not having to go from facility to facility and beg, borrow and steal in terms of being able to train. The continuity is key. And if you look at our January, February results over previous years, it haven't been good. Is it a coincidence this year? I wouldn't say it's that stark a difference, but it has helped. But it's something that the first team results on a Saturday have been helped by, and it also will help from the under 8s all the way through over the next 10, 15, however long we have it, and it becomes it's a very contemporary surface. It will help the whole club from top to bottom. There aren't many facilities you can have that will enhance the whole club. It's still a little bit surreal to think that we have such a contemporary facility and such a big facility that is so contemporary that it's the most contemporary facility of its kind in the country. And that's still, and there are also 3G pitches around, but not that particular surface. And it is quite surreal that we've got it. Unfortunately, it's suddenly set a new standard. So there's the pavilion and the academy building and everything else that suddenly needs to become very contemporary, Julian. Very good. We have set a wonderful new standard, and it's actually, we must make sure we don't take it for granted, because it took a lot of hard work to get there.
We're hoping to have a forum there in the close season, which you'll be able to see it.
Yeah, very good.
This gentleman had a question.
Gentleman here, yeah.
Could you tell us what's happened to Archibald Evans? Never seems to be available any week, or last season, he never seems to be available this season either.
Is that sorry?
Archibald Evans.
Oh, Troy is actually in good health, he's fit. He could not have timed his unavailability and his availability any worse. So he started the season, he picked up an injury which he needed some work over a sort of 3 or 4 month period. When we needed him most, he was injured, so we went through that hideous period of having I think it probably peaked with the Doncaster game, where we had all 6 players at the club who could play centre-back, all injured on the same day. We played against Doncaster, we actually played the WM formation, first I've ever played, I don't want to play it again. We didn't have a centre-back to pick on that day. All 6 were injured, all unavailable, including Troy. He sort of, with Adey, did a heck of a lot of work to be fit again, and that coincided with everybody being fit. So we needed him for 2 or 3 months, he wasn't fit. So from about Christmas time? But Christmas time, he's been fully fit every single week. But the back four have done so well, as you will well know. We've had clean sheets, we've won games. The manager, you don't necessarily want to change this around with it. So he's fit. Will he play a part between now and the end of the season? Every chance he will do. He's wanted to re-establish himself back at the club over a long period of time. This is not hopefully just a short-term thing. So the team's doing well. We've got good strength in depth. It's a good problem for a manager to have. But he's fit again. He has been since Christmas.
You play 4 at the back and 3 in the back over the years. What do you see the pros and cons of the systems, and why do you choose one over the other?
How long have you got? It's what I do for a job. I think about this every day. There's a balance between what you gain and what you lose by playing different systems, and ultimately it comes down to the players you have to play it. What suits the players you have, and is it 3 at the back or is it 5 at the back? For the easiest thing to coach over a short period of time is a back 4. It's the easiest. So I'm not saying it's easy. I'll rephrase it. The simplest thing. There are fewer grey areas and conversations with a back 4. With a back 3, there are a multitude of discussions in grey areas. So if you've got time to plan it and the players fit, then the 3 is a great system. It's made by the people at the front of the pitch. Without the right type of combination at the front of the pitch, the back 3 doesn't work so well. And a team will always be driven by the front of the pitch. And the connection between your goalkeeper and your number 9 is the best connection you've got, because you defend from the front, you attack from the back. And ultimately, any system will be a connection between the 2. I can't answer it because actually, with certain players, the 3 is perfect. With certain players, the 4 is. But certain players play well in a 4, don't play so well in a 3. So I get the best out of our players. And I think it evolves. And I certainly wouldn't say I would go back to it, because I know the pluses of it. Actually, what's more important is what's in front of the 3. So are you playing a 3-4-3? Are you playing a 3-5-2? Are you playing a 3-5-1-2? Are you playing a 3-4-1-2? Are you playing a 3-4-2-1? And every nuance has a big effect on what happens next. When you've got 3 at the front, is it like when we did it with Jamie Kewitt, Richard Logan, Ryan Harley? It was an arrow at the front, Jamie Kewitt in the middle, Richard Logan goes one side, and Ryan Harley picks the weakness the other side. They did it to 3 with Jamie in the middle, hit a little arrow. When we've done it with Marcus Stewart and off of Adam Stansfield and Richard Logan, Marcus played behind, so 2 and a 1. When we played a 3-4-3 a couple of years ago with Graham Cummins on the left, David Wheeler on the right, Alex Nichols in the middle. It was an arrow at the front. Alex down the middle, David on the right, Cummins on the left, and you had 2 in midfield, Grimes and Sercombe. So every little, and so I haven't spoken about the 3 yet. So every little, do you hit the middle of the pitch? Do you hit the outside of the pitch? Do you press down the middle? Do you press at the front? Do you show to the side? Do you show back inside? Do you play high? Do you play deep? Do you play compact? Do you play spread? So every nuance of a 3 is another file. ultimately, if you've got one weak link in there, it tends to be at the front of the pitch. If you can't sustain that dynamic, it won't work. I have to say, when you're having a tricky patch like we had this year, there's a heck of a lot of debate in there to risk that when you need just some resolute play. We've got our 4 going, we've got players who suit that. We won't be changing for a while, but we might go back there one day.
You ready, Quinn? He's ready.
Come on, Quinn.
When we're in League One, can I please be the mascot for the first game?
That's a yes, Quinn. That's a yes. Next question. That easy, please.
Just with the other way.
When we defend a corner, why don't we keep just one player out front? Because the ball's just driven straight back at us again, and we struggle sometimes.
Yeah, well, the thing with defending set pieces is no one way does it. You can't. It's not one system that you can't be beat from. It's a very. I do understand when you clear the ball, you've got no one there. But the first objective of defending a corner is not to allow the ball in your own net. Number one, the first objective is not to allow a header in the back of your net. We have conceded 3 goals from corners this year. 2 of the 3 were when we left someone up. We only conceded 1 corner this year. We had everyone back. The first objective is not to concede a goal. And if you look at all the corners we've had this year, I know last year we've defended about 270 corners. So if I just do the maths now in terms of how far we're through the season, we're about 3/4 of the way through the season. You can do the maths. You sort of know roughly how many corners we've defended this year. There aren't too many. You might have a second phase to defend, but that's not as dangerous as the direct first phase. It's just purely statistics. Yes, the ball comes out and they can put it back in. But over the course of 270 corners, it's purely statistics. The first objective is to keep it out the back of the net. And that's what we endeavour to do. And then after that, we'll deal with the next bit. So it's not we're not trying to score a counter-attack, we're trying to defend it. Bear in mind, has been a weakness for us over the past. And it's something that teams focus on because we've tended to have a smaller team than others. It's been a big objective for us. And I think this year we've done a pretty good job at it. Only conceded 3 corners so far this season. And last year it was in double figures by this time. So I think it's a valid point. There are a number of ways of doing it. It's not just one way. But we've got a group that want to do it together. And they've all got their specialist job in there. And the objective is to stop the ball going in the net. We've done that pretty well so far this year. I don't want to tempt fate. So we're bound to concede one at some point soon, because that's the way it works. Thank you very much for that question. Next gentleman here.
Well, there's usually a team that makes a sort of late charge and chasing back to the playoffs. Have you got predictions to who you fear that might be this year?
It's a topic we've discussed. We obviously had a mission to be a team that went on a run. If you look at the teams this year, it's almost impossible to answer. If you look at the teams this year who've had these very good runs, Carlisle had it at some point, they were unbeaten for a long time. Wickham had it up to the point where they played Spurs in the Cup and then we beat them on Tuesday, and they'd been at 16. I think there was also, who's the club we were talking about doing the same? But it's like a dozen games. They've all had this. Cambridge had it a bit before that. They beat us here and they went on a fantastic run. All those teams, Wickham is the best example, 16 games unbeaten, they lost 5 out of 6. Cambridge was similar. And it's one of the talking points we've had, which is how our wonderful run. Let's not suddenly lose 4-5. Now we've lost 2. I don't think we deserve to lose at all on Saturday. But we've been reasonably steady at that point where other teams start talking and have a plan against you. I'm hoping we can come through that without losing 5 out of 6 like Wickham did, which would knock them back down. Stevenage just had that run, and they've got themselves there. Whether they can sustain it, because now teams will look at them differently. They'll look at the videos, they'll talk between each other, what teams have done against us. That's what happens. They all help each other against the next opponent because it's such a momentary type of business. They're not worried about 6 months' time. They just want to help each other. I wonder whether Steelers can sustain it, because they've been an underdog type team. Now they're going to be given the respect that teams will stand back and defend against them. I'll be surprised, I'm not saying it's impossible, if they go on and keep doing it. Might happen, be surprised. So it's probably going to be one of those teams. I've thought for a while now that Mansfield will be a team that will be strong, that will get themselves in there, because the manager's no fool, gets exactly what he wants from his players. They do it in their own manner. When we played them here, we won 2-0. They were a strong side that day, probably the better side of the day. I would be surprised if they are strong and will be a competitor for us going into that final 3 or 4 games. So my prediction for your question is Mansfield. But it's an odd league, as you well know. Elaine's got another thing? Let's have to come down the back.
Is this season due to lower attendance at all?
I think no. I think we've established our budget for next year to try to keep this momentum going. So it's a very sort of I think fair, and you've got to get the balance between speculating too much and also being too cautious and safe that you put yourself in peril with not having a big enough squad. I think it's one of those things we have to overcome if we want to go forward, and we certainly need to go forward by improving our facilities. Then it's something we have to have a strategy for. But it's not just, it's over a 3 or 4 year period. Julian, have you got anything you'd like to add on that? That's gives that more clarity.
Massive debate that we've had in the boardroom any number of times about exactly that. Of course, you remember when we were in League One before, of course, we were getting great attendance, one because they were interested, but also the away attendance. So, everybody here wants the away end to be done as well. So if you do get up, Paul, that's a bloody nuisance, really. There's an irony in it all the way through, so somewhere along the line, something's going to give. So it certainly won't be helpful, but there's been a massive amount of work done, not only in the Gates Committee, but in both of the boards, to actually try and negate that as best as we possibly can. David Lee, who's here tonight, has been working extremely hard to try and get that into place as early as possible so we can plan it as well as possible. So I think you're right, it's going to have an effect, but as Paul says, we've already done our budget, we think we can get to that budget. It may affect it, we could start storming through and do particularly well next year or get into the division above. It will have an effect, you're quite right. It'd be churlish to say that it didn't. But I think with all the plans and all the work that's gone in, we can negate that as much as possible, and that's all we can do, particularly in exactly as Paul said. We've got to do this, we've got to go forward, it's an absolute necessity. So like we've dealt with all the difficult situations before, we'll deal with this one too.
I think my 10.5 years has been compromised in those scenarios the whole time. It's what we talk about so often, and I'm not a manager who beats his fist and says we need that money, and I understand the way the club functions, and there are sometimes we've got to cut that cloth, and all these, it's so the variables, the way we make our money, or have to spend our money. There's so many. It's to get the balance right. It's a compromise again.
Player that this year surprised me. I thought he had his best days with us, but he's proved me wrong this year in what I was thinking about him. Is Craig Woodman. Is there a player that surprised you this season?
Craig's surprised everybody. I imagine he surprised himself. Craig doesn't say too much, so we never quite know what he's thinking. I mean, Adey's here, he's had a part to play. There's two things, well, probably more, but there's two clear things which have an effect on any player. There's enjoying your environment you're in and being part of a purpose and feeling that you can go forward, and you're making a step forward in your career. But then you have this scenario where Craig was getting to the end of his career, and he's probably looking at how many years I've got. I like it here. I want to stay here. Looking around him and seeing good young players, and I don't want to speak for him, but there comes a point where you think, I'm going to have to step up a bit. And not only do I got to do my job, there are times when I'm thinking, Craig, I want you to do more. But he's got the point now where he's doing his job and he's doing more, and he's done a wonderful season. I don't want to tempt fate. He's been. I wouldn't say he's changed overnight, but he's certainly started to act. It starts with how you think, then it becomes how you act. And he's acting, in terms of his daily work, he's probably looking at it thinking, I can get another 3 or 4 years if I really, really knuckle down and look after myself and commit in all sorts of areas. It starts with that, and then it ends up with making an underlap on Saturday and crossing it from the byline, which that's not Craig Woodward, sure, it is. But it just shows you, if you want to stay somewhere and you like what you're doing, commit to it, and he's done that. I mean, Adey has, we might talk about it later, because that's the sort of thing that Adey's got his teeth into. Craig was always in for training, does what he had to do, go home. He started, I'm at work at 8:10 in the morning, the players normally arrive about 10 o'clock, and Craig's suddenly in the corridor at 9:10. Are you injured, Craig? Because that's injured players coming early. No, I'm just coming to do my gym work. Right? You just don't, so, yeah, I have to agree with you. I have a soft spot for all of them because I want them all to do well. They come here, on the whole, our players, are less than the going rate if you look at the industry as a whole and our league as a whole. They commit to, they want to be here because it gives them not just a salary, but it gives them a step forward in their career, or it gives them an extended career. And they're very, very committed, and Craig's certainly one of those. In terms of the rest of the squad, anyone who's surprised us and stepped forward, I mean, I have a lot of optimism for all of them. Liam McAlinden, who's joined us, has taken a while to second, but suddenly looking the player that we wanted to sign. Someone like Jake Taylor, I think, has been consistently competitive and fit and purposeful the whole season. There's lots of players who we've signed. Pierce Sweeney, who's had that awful injury against Doncaster or Luton before Christmas and has struggled since then. And Jack Stacey's taken his place and suddenly blossomed. In a way, you want that to be Pierce, because Pierce is our player. But that's, let's not worry about a good situation. So they're all improving. They really are. But we want more improvement. I think Craig is a really good example.
Just wondered how the stats are for the goalie being given and told where to dive on a penalty, and I just wondered how the stats were as to diving the correct way, because I noticed they're being told each time where to dive.
There's a couple of things we do. One is Mel Gwynn has actually become a heck of a lot of things Mel does. He's down his goalkeeping coach, which is probably 10% of his job. His logistics, his communication, Adey will know he's become indispensable in so many areas of the club. That's what we have to do at Exeter. One of the things he does on a match day is he'll look at the oppositional play, he'll look at the taker, the potential penalty taker will be facing, or two previous penalties, like what you see on the TV there, the red spot and the yellow spot, where they've been before, and he'll go on that, and he'll put himself in the mind of the penalty taker and think, where will he go next? And that's what Mel does. He'll also go through stats of our league over the last 3 years, 4 years. He'll look at every single penalty taken across all the leagues, and he'll know the stats. So if he doesn't know if it's a new penalty taker, our goalkeepers will know before the game. If you don't know what the plan is, the plan B is to go into this position, because the stats say it's more likely to go there than anywhere else. I don't want to say that because we've got the newspaper, we've got this. I don't want to give away our secrets to other teams. But that's the level. Mel has every single penalty that's been taken in League 2 over the last, since we've been in it, logged. And the stats are done. So he has got that data which he gives to our goalkeepers before every game. This is where you're going to go today. I mean, I'm in the change. The goalkeepers come back in first. They come back in 5 minutes before everyone else. And Mel sits down with the team sheet, which I give him. And he'll say there's 4 or 5 possible penalty takers here. There's 2 on the bench who might be on. They've taken penalty before, and our goalkeepers will have to try to remember. And the goalkeepers do commit to where Mel asks, and we've got a very good record. We have had in the past where a couple of our players have decided to go up to our goalkeeper and offer different advice, and that's yet to be successful. I can think one particular occasion again, I think it was Chesterfield Richard Duffy decided he knew what was going to happen more than Mel, and told Arthur Chris he had to dive a different way than and guess where the ball went. So hopefully our players have learned now to go with Mel. because he's the one thinking about it every minute. But there is a spot where the stats say you've got to go most. I'm not saying it.
Yeah.
On the city discussion group, somebody asked the other day, I'm going to read this from you now, why we never take clever foul like other teams do. Stevenage do it, Hartlepool done it Saturday, where they obviously run through and clever foul. We never do that by all accounts, which we don't, because I've watched a few games. Why is that?
You mean going sort of diving?
No. Our players fouling the other team to stop them running through.
Oh, I simply like the person suggested Troy Brown should report his man down.
In essence, yeah.
It's a very, very it's a deep conversation, that one.
They did ask, is it your way of trying to win fair play?
No.
I'm not.
We haven't spoken about it. In the 10 years I've been at the club, I've never asked the players to win fair play or to not get yellow cards. I've asked them not to do stupid things like punch a referee. I mean, there's a certain line which say discipline is discipline, but it's never been a topic. It's never been a topic either way. It's never been a topic we need to be perfect and don't do anything silly and don't waste time. And it's never been a topic I have said we are going to waste time and we are going to bring someone down. Troy was beside himself in the dressing room on Saturday, trying to work out whether he should not have brought his man down. He broke away for that second goal, and he fell over, and he had a chance to take his legs down, and he was beside himself. I don't know how much time I've got, but I think we've got enough going on for me to deal with that. I think the players make their own decision. I don't tell them not to. I certainly don't tell them they should do. It hasn't always worked. Jake Taylor probably took someone at Notts County with a little tap, and then he got a second yellow and he's off, and it cost us the game. So the trouble with it, it's hard to quantify what the positive and the negative of it. In that instant, it might be a positive, but what's the knock-on? So we discussed it. We discussed it ourselves after the game. Troy actually volunteered it himself. I should have done it. No, I shouldn't. I should have done it. No, I shouldn't. And that's the problem.
You do see it in a lot of games and a lot
I know.
in the higher leagues as well.
I'm not going to tell them to do it. They've got to do what's right at the time. And they feel right. I'm certainly not going to stand here and promote what you're suggesting. The players have got to. But we're not out there trying to win a fair play. That would be a nonsense if I suggested. We're proud of it when it happens, but we're not out there trying to do it.
Well, just one quick one. We had a Stonewall penalty Saturday.
Did we ever?
So, did you ever go into the referee and ask why it's not given?
Yeah, that tends to be one of Steve's jobs.
Yeah.
Steve Perry went in. He does that numerous times during the season. I've read my report this morning, and it was a game changer. It was so blatant a penalty. Yeah. It cost us the game. Yeah. They're the situations where, for all the planning and all the work, some things you just can't control, and it's a penalty. And then on the flip side, we have a penalty against us in the Portsmouth game, where we were completely on our uppers, and we have this ridiculous penalty go against us. Is that what can I say?
What was his remark on? What did he say? Was not a foul?
Referees were tempted to sort of say nothing.
I mean, that was...
We obviously thought it wasn't a foul. But a lot of the time, it's emotion, it's environment, it's are they got the courage to do it? Have they got the balls to make that decision at that moment, or are they going to hide behind doing nothing? And unfortunately, there's a lot of decisions like that, and I think that was such a penalty. I mean, I haven't met anyone yet who didn't think it was a penalty.
You look at it, just turn around and race right back up the field again. You stand there 2 seconds to look at it.
I think after a bit, referees do get worn down by external, noise or whatever. I just think I don't think he was going to give it. No. It's hard for me to decide. I don't know what he's thinking. I didn't go, and Steve went. It's one of the things Steve does. Yeah. One of the parts of his job, which he does so much. Steve, it's so many small areas. He's invaluable to me. And that moment saves me able to do it. I get time with the players at a crucial moment at the end of the game when we're talking about how we're going to react from this. And Steve's doing that for me. He does so much like that. So that's a big thing Steve does. He liaises with so many different points within our industry. Be be it other clubs, be it referees, be it media, all sorts of things he has a connection with, and that's one of them he does for me.
Question regarding your budget. Obviously, you get a budget each year, and you choose who's employed in that budget. Just spoke about Steve Payman. Just what value does Steve Payman give to you now each season? It's relatively changed because you're a lot more expensive when you first come to the club. And also, with your new backroom staff you've taken on, how have they fitted in, and are they doing what you want to do? What was the plan in bringing them in as well?
Nice question, thank you. Yeah, Steve's invaluable. It's hard when you don't see someone actually doing something obvious on the touchline like I do, or physio runs on. Steve is titled as director of football. I suppose he's become my sort of partner in terms of, could call him assistant manager, but he's director of football. But we share the office together. I could not function without someone alongside me who understands me and can take the slack or pick up the dramas or the fight or the challenges in other areas to allow me to get on with a day's work. And there's no one day that's the same as the next. So be it just logistics, just dealing with young players, dealing with other coaches, dealing with the phone rings, and it's the club wanted to talk to us about one of our players. Steve takes years of experience. He can take that phone call, and that's his moment of the day. You know, he's having to deal with a championship, premiership club who are interested in one of our players. On the flip side, the door's open. If Steve phones a club, they take the call. The door's open, and to have someone of his credibility and standing with Exeter does open doors for us. There's no doubt about it. He works. When I first arrived at the club, he was kind of part-time, and he said to me, I don't really do away trips, days, and I've been 2 or 3 days a week, and okay, that'd be nice if you could help me. And then within a couple of years, and now 10 years later, he's in every day, doing every single trip, last to go home every night. And it's like anything, when things start to grow and develop, there's more things needed to do. It's not like you find new things. That you make a phone call, it sort of generates more phone calls. You try to do business, it generates more business. And Steve picks up where I just cannot cope with all of it. In terms of our support staff, and it's going back to what I mentioned, we're on the up again. So Wayne Carlisle joining us in the academy, his head of coaching, tying up. For 10 years I've wanted to get a grasp of the coaching we do at the first team level, and making sure it filters down. So when we're coaching the under 8s, the 9s, the 10s, 11s, we make an appropriate modifications we go through, ready for first team football. Wayne is starting to put that in place. Between myself and Simon Haywood, there's a nice tie-up now. So Wayne's doing a really very diligent, thorough individual. He's also played for us. He knows the club. And he's put a very nice thread through the club. That's his job. Matt Taylor's come in. He's working with the 21 players and the reserves in the first. Remember, we've got such a big club that we've got these different departments and different training grounds that you hear about. When it gets very organic, Matt's come in and instantly got the respect of the players. He's been there. He's worked his way through our club on his career. He's coming back. He's a very, very determined coach. He's added a big part to us. On the physio side, I'm not saying it because he's here, we've not had a better physio at Exeter in the time we've been here. Didn't have a lot to beat. But he's doing, I didn't mean that, he's doing really, really well, and he's now beginning to establish the prehab, the conditioning of the young players. All in all, it's developing all the time, and Amy's got Jess, the sports therapist who works alongside him, connected to the academy, to Harry, who's the academy physio. So right across the board, our support staff is getting stronger and stronger, and it's completely the opposite what happened for 5 years, where the first year Marcus Stewart left, then Andy Tilson left, then Rob Edwards left, to the point where we went to Brazil with no physio as a club. We had no physio. You were there, weren't you, Quinn? Yeah, we had no physios with us in Brazil. We had no coach other than myself, manager. We had no physio, no coaches. It was just myself, Mel, Steve. That was all that's left. And now since then, we've built up again. So it's a very, very healthy moment, progressive place at the moment, and I'm very proud of that.
But yes, coming up to 1:30, so do we have a sort of final John?
What's your view on the role of agents in the game now, in League Two particularly? Good, bad, indifferent?
One of those things you get used to, it can be an inconvenience. We're not a club that relies on them too much. There are clubs in our league who will have a huge turnover of players. 12 will be gone this summer, another 12 will come in, and the agents will be at the heart of that. I tend to like the continuity. So we're not always looking for too many players, so therefore there's not too many agents involved. I think at our level, it's peanuts. What we have to pay, or the players pay the agents themselves, maybe, it's peanuts. As you go up, the amounts you're talking are huge and ugly, and it's a part of football now that's established itself. I think the problem was, if you go back a couple of generations, there was no agents. Clubs held all the power. Players were on a maximum wage. They had to do exactly what they were told. And probably the clubs abused lots of players. That was kind of the industry. And then of course you get a flip. Suddenly the players have the ability to have agents. And guess what? The agents probably now abuse the clubs. And so you've got this. You've had this reaction. But it's a necessity that we have. We know lots of very good agents. Lots of very good agents, and sometimes I think we've created a reputation for ourselves that we treat people well, and I think lots of agents see us as a very good opportunity for their players to get on, and they work with us to do that. But we have very few problems with agents. We pay very little in terms of the overall picture of football, and we have very few problems. And most people get on with us, most players get on with us, and therefore the agents will get on in the future with their players. It's not a big issue for us. There's one other. Yes, was on.
Yeah, you were speaking about the value of backroom staff, and then you listed a number of people who have left. Does the club encourage and help the backroom staff to develop in the same way that we develop players?
Yes. I mean, just purely the coaches need to develop with their qualifications, and we've done that with the likes of Rob Edwards and Danny Butterfield and other coaches. They've actually gained qualifications with us, which we provide as part of our education funding for our like any business for our employees, and they've gained qualifications along the way. Physio, for example, we have to go on courses which we provide as part of Adey's contract with us, which enables him to. What sort of courses have you been on since you've been with us?
Sources are paying lots of money, so it's two-way street.
I see ourselves as any sort of business that we want to help the employees, and ultimately, like players, Adey will move on at some point in his career, because we've had Danny Butterfield and had David Lee's gone on to America, the analyst, and Andy Marriott moved on, and Rob Edwards, and it's going to happen. We've had physio move, more than one or two physios move, and it's not. I do always point out, bigger is not better. I do have that phrase stamped out. It's not bigger better, but it's bigger, and everyone will move on in their career somehow. So it's like players. It's the same. We've got an environment where they're encouraged to work hard. We support them, but at some point, there's every chance they'll move on. And that's what's happened, and will continue to happen, no doubt. There's Matt Taylor and Wayne Carlisle and the others, at some point that'll happen to them too.
I think that's excellent.
Those questions. Any final question? Gentleman here.
I know it's a few months down the line, I think David reported it, but Christmas, you have 4 games in 10 days. How do you, both of you, manage the players, maybe recovery, emotionally, having so many games in such a short space of time?
Yeah, it's a topic we have to address throughout the season, the peaks and troughs in the energy levels. And you've got a squad of about 30 players, if you include all the young ones, but yet you've got probably a dozen players that have got all that workload, and probably another dozen that haven't got hardly any workload because they're on the bench and they're not having that. So to get the balance right between those that are really working hard and those that are not, it's very difficult. But it's, the way I describe it, you've got a war over it's 46 games, and every game is another battle. You've got to get them up for the battle and find the right words in the right way to get everyone up fully focused for that battle. And you crash down afterwards, your adrenaline goes, you're knackered, the players come in limping and bruised, and you've got to find a way of getting up. And every week's different. Depends on the surface, the weather, whether you've won, whether you've lost. There's so many factors that go into it. It is a constant, we do look at it like a battle a week, or 2 battles a week, and then every now and then there's 10 games that come up. And it does help when the team's constant. You don't have to change. So all you're concentrating is on the player's workload, how much energy, and that's what Adey will explain to you in a minute, how he works out which players have the propensity for injury based on how much they've run, the intensity they've run. Adey's got all that information now, which we've had in the last 6 months, courtesy of the Grecians and the money they provided for that data.
Yeah.
So that'll be able to...
Lots of us.
Beg your pardon, sorry. Sorry. I see the little stickers. So, that's a really, 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 a step forward for us. But you're dealing with the emotions, the psychology, the weather, the travel, especially over Christmas when people want to go see their families. It's a very difficult time, and it's most of my day, 90% of it is spent logistics, working out what people are thinking. The football's a small part of it. So it helps when you've got a constant team. Whereas for 15 matches between August and November, every single week I had to change the back four. Every game, you've got to go through a whole week of training for that back four to get together. And whereas if you've got the same back four, that's done. You concentrate on how they feel. And those things, not that they don't work on the back four, but it's totally different. So continuity is everything if you can get it. And that's, it's been a very tough year. So, but we're on a mission. And I'm going to crash at some point, but probably sometime in June. And have a rest. But at the moment, we're just on it, aren't we, Adey?
One last question. I know that it's coming up shortly. Lots of the fans didn't like this Checkatrade trophy. It was a problem as we're not gone. It certainly was. I know the league have admitted it was very, very badly put together, especially with the whole game solution, which that's now gone away. But that's something that's still outstanding. I just wondered what, from a manager's point of view, you thought of that competition.
Purely on football and valid football matches to play in, that we could gain something from, it was a plus. It was a plus because I was able to play young players and give them Max Smallcombe and Matt Jay, and there were players I was able to play. Now there are politics involved with it, and I have to, for the question, I've got to separate myself from the politics, and just purely in terms of, we're always looking for really good fixtures for our reserve players, and I think the problem with the format of the competition is you can only play so many. We stuck with the format. We only played 3 or 4 young players. We wanted to avoid the fine that you would get from Luton played a whole new team and took the fine and march on. We were very careful with this, and we were very careful to stick to the rules. But with our players we wanted to play, we gave players some really good match time against Chelsea and Oxford and Swindon, and it was a really good opportunity. And in that time of the season where you're searching for reserve games of a certain standard, and I think we would also have to engage in the competition with the FA Premier League Cup like we played a few years ago. Those games gives our young players so much. So purely football, there were lots of positives to it, and I didn't mind it as much as another game. We did have a few debates which players should play. We always played on Saturday in the time. We didn't want a fine, of course. We got the money like Portsmouth and Luton to take a fine. But taking myself away from the politics of it, I really enjoyed the matches. But especially the likes of Chelsea, whatever, I really enjoyed that. It was good for our young players. I mentioned Matt Jay, who scored a goal against Oxford and played all 3 of those games. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Paul's taken my line there. You should clap in a minute, because I want to say thank you very much to Paul for giving us his time. And I think I'm privileged sitting in the boardroom to hear Paul speaking, and I think when we are able to listen to him, we appreciate what a fantastic manager we've got, not just on the field, but what's going on up here. We're very, very lucky. So thank you, Paul. And thank you. We're going to have a 15-minute break now, and then we're going to listen to Adey.
The bar's open, there's some cross badges over there, so, you know, see you in 15 minutes. So I'm really pleased that Adey's here to explain not only about that, but a lot of stuff that he does, because you were very generous as supporters and very kind to me, because it's not nice to keep asking for money all the time. So, and I like to say, like Paul said, that our upturn in form came with the 3G pitch. It also coincided with our GPS kits, so I'm sure every single little bit helps. So, Adey's going to start off by giving a little bit of background about himself, and he's happy to take questions as we go along. So, here, Adey Saunderson.
Hi guys, good evening. Thanks very much for coming down tonight. So yeah, a little bit about me. My experience really came from, sort of in the sport industry, came from rugby. I worked for sort of teams in the Premiership and Championship for a few years, and how I came to Exeter City Football Club was kind of, well, I agreed basically. I took a year out from rugby. I was going to go to Australia and do all the things like that, while I'd been sort of working hard in sport, trying to establish myself. And I came here for 3 months to help Will Howard, who was part of the academy, help him out while there was no senior physio at the first team. And they tried to get me to stay, and I said no. I was very sure I wanted to go to Australia. I wanted to go and work for a rugby team out there, and I wanted to do a certain course. And then the next month they tried to get me to stay again, and then, well, eventually, let's just say that Tiz has his way with words. And you know, I think the difficulty is when you meet somebody that's got a vision and a projection of where they want to go and what they think that they bring to the industry and to certainly, you know, for us, to the team, you can sort of you attract to that, you get warmth to that, and it's very easy to see, you know, just like you say when he stood up and he gave his time, it's interesting to see what goes on in his head. You know, obviously I've worked with maybe 4 or 5 managers over my very, certainly at the moment, what I feel quite short career, but I would definitely say that, you know, without wanting to sort of fill him up a little bit, but he does have a different way of thinking and a different way of approaching things and talking to you as a member of staff, and also then how he then translates that and talks to the players and sort of. So I think, you know, it's sort of a bit of a story as to why I ended up here. But other than that, the sports I played are very much contact sports. I haven't really got much experience in football, and as the East End Greasers will know, I'm fully willing to admit that I never really, you know, had a big sort of aspiration in football to begin with. But I think that with any job, it comes down to the sort of the people that you're working with as much as, you know, the sort of job that you're in. And I think we've got a very nice thing here at Exeter, and a lot of people working, or a few people working exceptionally hard, and that's always nice to see, and that's sort of something that certainly motivates me when I join a team. So that's about that really. So we'll get quickly onto the GPS units, and I would just like to obviously say thank you very much for your generous donations. And this little unit is what all of your hard-earned cash went on. Doesn't look like much, but it is filled with lots of very lovely sensors, gyroscopes, accelerometers, GPS, heart rate, and it's one of the first sort of units that has got all of the heart rate and the GPS and accelerometer data in one unit. Personally, for me, this is a convenience factor, because most of the other GPS units that are, you know, slightly sort of more advanced, they don't take a heart rate monitor. There's one out there now that does, as far as I'm aware. And you know, if they've got a GPS unit on the back and then a heart rate monitor on the chest, it's more and more stuff that the players, that, you know, they sort of had to acclimatise to wearing this to begin with. It's small things for them to wear when they just want to feel as natural as possible, really. So the guys wear these on the chest strap. Some of them wear it on the side here. It sits just around sort of plexus. And I I mean, that's really as sort of as technical as it gets. Where the really interesting stuff comes is then when you start using the application, the software that comes with it. So the sensors run off Bluetooth. They basically feed it straight live to the iPad. So during a training session, we can sort of monitor if we want, how far somebody's run, how hard somebody's working, how many times they've done a certain number of accelerations, or how far they've run at a certain speed. So we have different sort of speed zones that we look at in terms of the intensity that someone's working. So it really enables us to sort of keep a better track on what the players are doing momentarily, instantaneously. So, if you're concerned about a player, say, for instance, one of the slightly older players where maybe they aren't going to do as much training, travel as far as other players, you can sort of keep a track on that. So obviously, the coaches are very much set in the fact that they're coaching, that they've got a ton of vision on that aspect, and so it's just a little way of trying to get the best out of optimising the players' training load, because obviously if you work too hard, then we get more injuries and so forth. So if I just show you a little, so it's lovely, we get a nice little GPS track of all the players, so you can see that is, believe it or not, a satellite image of SJP, and it automatically does that for me. And then that, as you saw, is just a big red dot, right? Well, that's all the players' heat maps, so the positions that they spent on the pitch. If you spend a lot of time in the top right corner, you'll have a big hot spot where you spend a lot of time in the top right corner, that sort of thing. So it's very interesting positionally wise. If Sis wants a certain player to do a certain thing, you may imagine in your head that would, on the pitch, that would look like a triangle, let's say, for instance. And he can then look at that and go, yes, he's doing what I asked him to do. Or you can look at that and say, you've not quite understood what I wanted to do. Take it to the player and say, I was saying about this run here, this position here, do it, and it just allows him, it's just another little thing that gives you that edge. But the biggest thing that I guess that people are most interested in, and certainly the players, as much as the coaching staff and as much as myself, it comes down to what we sort of try and quantify as a load, which is a very difficult thing to quantify when there's so many different variables. But one of those is basically distance run. And distance run in a top speed zone, so anything we use above 19 kilometers an hour. And then one of the good measures of how hard the individuals have worked is not so much just heart rate and how long they spent in, maximum heart rates and all that sort of stuff, but is the distance per minute that they've travelled. So the awesome software that we have basically will look at the data and it will give you an average distance per minute. So what that allows us to do is look at the sort of the general intensity that all the players are working at, which obviously you can then sort of correlate to how hard they've worked and therefore potentially how much recovery they might need. So for instance, you get players like Brian Harley, Dave Wheeler, they will in a game typically run anywhere between 10.5 as a sort of a low game kilometres put in the 90 minutes to 12.2 kilometres in 90 minutes is the highest we've had. And if you sort of average that out as metres per minute, that works out roughly 120 to 125 metres per minute. So if you think about a 100-metre race, people are running a 100-metre race in 10 odd seconds. These guys are running 125 metres per minute for 90 minutes. That's a significant amount of distance over a very short period of time. It's quite large. So imagine if I were to tell you that when you run, you put anywhere between 7 and 10 times your body weight through your knee. Now obviously that force isn't exactly direct, as it's shared in so many different ways, but if they run 125 metres every minute and they're putting between 6 and 10 times their body weight through the knee every time they strike the floor, you suddenly start to sort of understand or try to understand what it actually means to run. And then you've got the added fact that these guys are then kicking balls, striking balls, they're changing, they're stopping, which takes lots of eccentric load, they're accelerating, they're jumping, they're turning, all of these movements which very hard to quantify, but the ones that you can are such as what I just said, the distance and accelerations and so forth. So what we then do is I have to upload that data onto the cloud and then mark out, for instance, if we talk about, just keep it simple with games, we mark out the first half and the second half and then put it into an Excel or Google spreadsheet is what I use, and then sort of basically a bunch of formulas, which I've already seen one face in here who's helped me out a few times. It's like another language basically to me. So obviously, this is Google Sheets or Excel, which as some of you will know, if you accountants or mathematicians anyway, or research scientists, you can put in some quite powerful sort of mathematical formulas and gain some interesting data in order to sort of plot trends and sort of variabilities and stuff. So, Ollie sitting at the back actually has helped me quite a lot. So some of this stuff is beyond me in the sense that I'm a physiotherapist, not an analyst or a statistician. I've had to learn quite a lot myself. So what we can do here is basically we put it into a database of the raw data, and then I have to do a few sums, and then I have different reports. So I have an individual game report. So if say Tis wanted to know, for instance, how far on average the team ran the game just gone, I can then tell them that. And then if you said, okay, well, what about the last game? How does that compare? Were we down a percentage or were we up a percentage? What sort of how does that work? I've then just got a database where I can select the different games, and it'll just pull that information through straight away for Tis. Because I use it on a Google spreadsheet, essentially I can share that live over all of the coaches over the internet. So all of us could be on the same page having a conversation in a chat box while you can see the sort of the data changing. I then have an individual report which will show all of the averages for each player. Again, I've got a database where I can just select each player. And the players themselves actually quite like this one. Again, one of the things you sort of talked about earlier was saying, like you mentioned, Woody was somebody that surprised you. So every single morning, after every single game, since we've had these GPS units, the first person to come in and ask me, how far have I run, what did I do, what was that like compared to the last one, is Craig Woodman. And I think, as much as you sort of mentioned, the performance is sort of correlated with GPS units, there's all sorts of things you can sort of speculate. I think what it gives the guys, the players themselves, is a sort of a generalised objectivity as to what they achieved in that game. So, if for instance, it was Carlisle, Leyton Orient, and then Luton, I think, right when we got the first ones, and it was, I think Carlisle and Luton, Leyton Orient have the biggest pitches in our league, I think, and it was interesting to look at the distances that the guys covered, and then the Luton game, a number of the players at half time said, I'm absolutely shattered and I don't know why. And you sort of look at that, one, it's great because obviously they're putting 100% in out there, otherwise they wouldn't be coming in shaking and not able to sort of tell you why they feel so bad. But then if you look at the data, for instance, Jake Taylor ran a significant distance to what he'd normally run. His heart rate percentage in terms of the top sort of 80%, 90%. When he got to the game that he felt extremely tired in, he had run less in terms of total distance, run less in terms of high speed distance, and run less in terms of distance per minute, so his intensity was down. Yet he spent nearly 64 minutes above 85% of his maximum heart rate. For the previous games, he spent about 40 minutes. So, although that doesn't change it instantly in the game, you can't use the data live, but also what you're going to do, you're not just going to sort of substitute him at half time, such a crucial player, but what it does allow you to do is to then look at that retrospectively and say, okay, well, the next week has to be tailored a little bit better than him in order to get the best out of him for the following game. Instead of it just being guesswork, instead of it just being, he looks tired, I would defy anybody to sort of tell me the difference between somebody who's tired and somebody who's unfit. Okay? Other than the obvious, regarding body shape or what have you, whatever you want, but you cannot tell me that somebody is unfit or somebody is tired if you don't know what training they've done, or how you've measured that training, or how you're measuring the fact that you think they're unfit, or how you're measuring the fact that you think they're tired. Okay? So these are the sorts of things that allow us just to sort of tweak that for them, and that might only be that instead of doing an hour and a half training, he does an hour and 10 minutes training. It doesn't have to be like, they get a week away. You just tweak it, so you're always trying to keep the player on that edge of peak performance, because what comes after peak performance is injury, because peak performance is pushing yourself to that edge, that top level before you get injured. So these sorts of things just help us to really try and maximise training and maximise the preparation for the players individually, and then aside from the serious sort of statistical side of it that say like the coaches or myself might be involved in, it provides a little bit of camaraderie and competition between the players themselves. Jake Taylor, Ryan Harley, Dave Wheeler, Ollie Watkins, they love it. Who did I run more than this? He got 1,300 metres in the top end speed there, and I only got 1,100. But all of the statistics are all well and good. Ultimately, they are part of a whole package, and you could argue that some player might run 11 kilometres each game, and then 2 games in a row they run 8.5 kilometres. Now, unless you've watched that game, unless you know what the plan was, what Tiz wanted, what the players were trying to achieve, which side of the pitch the ball went down the most, you could have planned to have played down the right the whole game, and yet the opposition had other plans, and they played you down the left the whole game. So until you've seen that game, until you've watched it, and you understand what was supposed to be achieved, or what they tried to achieve, but then actually what happened, the statistics are just numbers that you could, make up and decide what they mean yourself. So there's no one golden bullet. It's all part of working together, with the coaching staff and myself, and sort of trying to take a big overall picture, really. So as far as the units go, that's probably we have the really heavy and expensive unit that they all go on. Basically, in order to get the data off them, that has to be charged. But the good thing about it is it's mobile. I can do it on the bus. So, for instance, when I've got a 6.5 hour, 7 hour journey back from Hartlepool, 2 in the morning, I can still do the statistics on my computer, and then they're all there ready for sort of Sunday, Monday. Yes, has anyone got anything they'd like to ask?
What we've heard so far?
Not you.
Actually, you've answered what I was going to ask, which was like people who've got, do 10,000 steps, so they could do they do more at the end of the night to get up to their 10,000. Has it had that sort of effect on the lads?
No, I mean, it's it'd be kind of obvious if there was a guy just in the corner running up and down. So, no, I don't. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, the guys who've got, they all want to play football. They all want to work hard. They already did work hard. I know that's not what you were suggesting, but I think what's happened is it's more of an interest, and it allows them to have a greater understanding of what they've done, and you feel tired. This could be why, not just what am I doing? Have I had enough sleep? What about my nutrition? What about it? Do you remember what you did only 48 hours ago? You did this, and then they can see and they go, well, normally I run 10, and you go, yeah, well, you ran 11 and a half that game, so there's maybe a reason why it takes a little bit more recovery. So I don't think that you've got that. I think the guys all want to work hard already, and this just gives them an outcome, an objective of interest. Don't get me wrong, not all the players are coming up going, what did I do, what did I do? There are a few, and there are a few that enjoy it, and there are a few that sort of think, well, exactly what I said earlier, where really you've got to see the game anyway. So what happened in the game, they can't change that based on the statistics. So some of them are more interesting than others, but yes, sir. On the left, yeah, okay.
I don't know whether you could actually answer this, but I go back 50 years following City, and obviously the players 50 years ago didn't have access to this sort of equipment and these sort of statistics.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a huge difference between the fitness of players now to say 50 years ago? Because I mean, I remember most of them used to smoke and drink quite a lot back then as well. I was just curious whether you've got any angle on that, you know, from...
Yes and no. You know, you were right. It's obviously, one of the problems with the question is that 50 years ago we didn't have the data, so you can't retrospectively analyse how far or how fit people were 50 years ago. But we do know that in the last 10 years, I think it's total distance has increased by I think it was 70%, and top end speed running or sprint distances, I can't quite remember off the top of my head, have been increased by 30%. So if that's in the last 10 years, then I dread to think how much they've improved in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Because you know, in the last 10 years, and that's Premiership based, and if you look at the distances our guys do similar distances to Premiership lads. Premiership lads might do 12 and a bit more frequently, kilometres. But the biggest difference is the distance per minute, so the level of intensity on average throughout is higher, and also the top end speed, so like the sort of 1.5 kilometres at over 19 kilometres, that's higher. And part of that's training, part of that's genetics and metrics, things like that. But that's the biggest difference. So if you think that the total distance increased by 70%, and that's 10 years, and they're doing 12.5k, it sort of makes a big impact as to how much 50 years ago they would or wouldn't have been doing.
Yeah, thanks.
You've only got to look at replays of Match of the Day and the big match whatever from the late 60s, early 70s. The pace of the game was just so much slower.
Yeah, back then or now.
Yeah.
Back then, yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Like I said, there's a lot more concentration on the accelerations and decelerations, so the explosivity of the game, the distance per minute, the intensity which lads run, and then again that sort of top end speed running. And the reason for that is if you look at sort of game data and correlate that to objective sort of physical data, the winning teams will often perform the highest speed zone distances or the highest number of distance per minute, and when it's all right having the data going, yeah, that's cool. Well, that's kind of in some level a bit obvious. The team that's working and pressing the hardest is a team that wins. Okay, that doesn't shock anyone in here, does it really? But you've got the data now, so now you know. So then you address that factor. Say, for instance, if this pulled out that the lads were all doing 200 metres in the top end speed zone, we'd be saying that looks a little bit odd. Let's address that. Do you not feel fit enough? Can you not achieve that? And what are our top end speeds that we've got in the team? And it just, all of this stuff allows you, again, like I said a number of times, but to just tweak training, just tweak the load, and just tweak performance. But you are right, yeah. This day and age it is, and we still think it can go more intense, faster, further. So, in some respects that's exciting, in some respects that's worrying. We are only human after all.
So there's a question on the left.
Yeah.
In League 1 and League 2,
yeah.
Are all the teams using this now, or are we one of the first or one of the last? Or?
League 1, definitely, I think you see a lot more this sort of technological analysis, but certainly among our league, we're one of probably the later teams to adopt it. But for instance, this unit by all means was obviously raised money for by you guys and was 10 and a bit, give or take, £1,000. But Brentford's, for instance, they have moved the GPS stuff and the analysis, things like that. So their fee for GPS, just GPS, not GPS and heart rates, is £65,000 a year, and that's a subscription. So, but for that, you get. Obviously, they've got a lot more units. That's fine. Let's say they've got double the units. They've got 60 units, but they also get the software is a lot more advanced. But then the reason that I do a lot of the analysis on Excel and stuff like that is because the software is good. But But that doesn't really make too much difference. But they get, you know, unlimited units returned and repaired. They get, you know, help when they're talking about analysis and stuff like that. So you pay for what you get, and you know, we are where we are, and we do what we do with what we've got. And this is a good, you know, good set of units that allow us to at least start to try and you know, even in the Premiership and what have you, this is an evolving science. And people, you know, some managers will throw it out the window, some managers will read hard into it, and I think, you know, we've got a great balance here. If there's something wrong, Tiz knows I'm going to come and tell him, but he doesn't sit there asking me for a report next second. You know, and I think it's very easy to get bogged down in the numbers if you aren't careful and lose the football. Which, let's be honest, if the lads ran 10 kilometres in a game and won, and they ran 11.5 kilometres in a game and won, which one do you care about the most? They both won. So, you know, you can't change it. What you can do is just, again, look at it and help, and use it to help analyse and sort of try and improve. You had a question?
This may be a dark question or not, but long-term injured like Lee and Robbie now,
yeah,
will that help them get fitter quicker?
Fitter quicker?
Because obviously if they're injuries, because their injuries are
yeah,
broken leg.
Fitter quicker, you know, fitness is physiology, and we are all made up of very similar, almost identical parts and cells. So fitter quicker, no. Will it allow me to monitor their training load so that when they go back into the game, they are appropriately conditioned in order to then therefore reduce their risk of further injury? Yes. And what allows someone to get fitter quicker is, you know, how fit they were to begin with, their genetics in general, and then the type of training applied. But if I ask somebody to you know, go on a bike and do a high intensity interval training session, 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 30 seconds it's hard out, and I want you to be above 90% on your max heart rate, they're doing the same work as if I asked you to do it, or if I asked this person to do it, or this person to do it. So what it does allow me to do is to monitor and make sure that over a period of time they've achieved an appropriate level of sort of cumulative, what we call cumulative load, so that I know that their body's conditioned enough. You know, if you or I stepped out onto the football field and we tried to keep up in 20-30 minutes, we might have a hammy or a calf. But that's the whole point of them trying to sort of train those guys to that level, so that when they go back out, you know, when I put a player back out onto the pitch, like, or when I sort of give Tiz obviously to put a player back out on the pitch, my hope is that I've conditioned them enough to essentially last, you know, that sort of full game scenario. However, we all know that there's a difference between fit enough to play a game of football and being sharp enough and switched on and having that sort of game fitness. So they get eased in back into it, but the first 10, 20, 30 minutes that they get eased back into it, that's not a problem for them. And that's my goal, so that I know that when they get eased back into it, because when they're eased back into a game, they've been training for 2 weeks fully or thereabouts, okay? And then they start getting eased back into games, and then once they've got eased back into games, they're still then training. So that's where the sort of game fitness comes back in. Can I get fitter quicker with this? No, but it does allow me to monitor what I'm doing to make sure that I'm doing the right things. I think that's the key, really. Anybody else? Yes.
One of the things that's different from 30, 40, 50 years ago is substitutions. Now, when the subs were first introduced, they were theoretically only for injuries, but everybody cheated on that, so they soon stopped that. But still, it was only one sub allowed. I remember I was at Sutton versus Leeds in 1970 or whatever it was. Jack Charlton was injured in about the first 5 minutes, and he basically, the game was so slow he was able to stand on the D and just walk through the game.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that anymore.
No.
So does this data help you advise Tiz on substitutions?
No, because we can't use it live on the side of the pitch. That's FA rule, and I don't really think he needs that help. You know, he's been doing it for a long, long time, and if I say to Tiz that I think a player's tired, he says, yes, I agree, or really, I hadn't noticed which one, and then he'll monitor that player anyway, right? But if I say to Tiz, he's run this far or that far, that's not really going to change his decision because that is the game. And you know, as you well know, when you step out on the field, you have to do what you have to do. You know, it sort of one of the sort of the crazy things is there's very little influence that for all the build up and all the preparation, there's very little influence once those players cross that white line and the whistle blows. Very little influence. Any of us on the bench can have. Yeah, you can shout a few comments and a few things on, but it's all about that prep. So what the players do, whether they run 10 kilometres or 15 kilometres, they rose to that challenge of the game. So does it help make making substitutions? No. And I don't think it. I don't even though that they are looking at whether you can use data on the sideline live, because I think they realise that actually it'll make very little difference. You know, even if your best player is absolutely shattered, you still want him out there because you know, and you've chosen that team for a very specific reason. And I think that you know the mind leads the body, and you know we've all been in a situation if you play sport where you're absolutely exhausted, but suddenly you get all that energy. If you'd have substituted him thinking he's exhausted, and you didn't give him a chance to get his second win or whatever, you'd be a little bit disappointed. Yeah. Anybody else? Not particularly. Obviously, once again, I'm extremely grateful actually for guys reaching in. I do know that you got the question because I think that Taggy was getting fed up with getting the question. So have you got a question? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what's the next bit of kit that you need?
You've got the money there. Come prepared with a shopping list. No, I mean it's everything. The club is evolving as much as it's been around for a long time, and certainly my department, the medical department, and the sports science department is ever evolving. I mean, the East Emigrations have already offered to try and support us with a couple of iPad minis. So for instance, this stuff can be used live, so it's very difficult for me if I've got 4 or 5 lads that are injured, we have them when training's going on, to then sort of advise the players pick up my phone, the coaches pick up my phone and go, oh, he's run this far. Whereas if the coaches have an iPad out there, they can sort of keep an eye on what the lads are doing, and in general, if they suddenly realise that some guys run 15, 16 kilometres in a training session, they can pull him out and say, you've done a little bit too much here. But I mean, in terms of the kit that I need, but the problem with the kit that the medical and the sports science departments need is that it tends to be quite expensive, and we're not a popular department when it comes to budgets, because a lot of the things that we use tend to be consumable, and they don't last forever. And I mean, it's a very broad question for me right now. There are a number of things that we could use into the healthy recovery and things like that, but they're not cheap. They're about just under £2,000 each. I mean, I think some of you guys helped us with game readies at one point a few years back. So the Grecians I know did, and if you buy a game ready, it's about £1,400. That's just for the unit. The cable that you need with the unit then costs £110. The plug costs £69, and then each cuff that puts on a different portion of the body, like the arm, the leg, the groin, they're between £330 to £450 each. And guess what? There's one for the right and one for the left. So it becomes very, very expensive. And those at the moment they're in the process of being refurbished, which 3 of them are being refurbished, and I think one cuff might be being repaired. We get 2 new cuffs because one of them split, and all in all, that's costing about £1,000. So it's very difficult to sort of say what bit do I need, but there's lots that we could do.
I think we should say that Elaine does Grecian Goal. We work very closely together, but Grecian Goal is at the moment raising money to help you update those ever-readies, games readies.
I do know that I spoke to Taggy about it. That there is money on the way. Again, like I say, very, very grateful for that. But as I'm sure that you guys are aware, we just tend to continuously ask for money, and you know, it's upgrades as well. You know, it's you buy a piece of equipment, and in 4 or 5 years' time, either it needs refurbishing or it needs replacing, and it's.
That's where we started. The first thing we bought was iPads when Rob was here.
Right.
It might be worth you giving us a little wish list.
Yeah, and
Not saying we can do anything, but it gives us a
I think it may be, you know, it's certainly opening the dialogue about that. We've got, you know, there are things that I can put on there, and I can put everything I want on there, and you guys can say, well, this is achievable, this isn't achievable, and I think that's possibly something that
because I mean,
might be appropriate.
we asked for supporters of money, but it's going on the pitch, it's our team, so it's obviously
Yeah. I mean, obviously, my goal is to try and assist in the peak performance of the guys as much as the rehab and the recovery. And I think, you know, the physio tends to get sort of stuck with every concept, whether that's their strength and conditioner, a personal trainer, a nutritionist, a masseuse, a rehabber, you know, like, or that they can suddenly, you know, start prescribing medicines that the boys want. You know, we're the first port of call medically, and often the last port of call. So, you know, it is a big role, a big task. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we could.
What about psychology? Because if you're coming back from an injury, you've had a break or something. I hold my breath when they're going for a tackle, just watching. So how do you get over that?
Personally, I hold my breath too. Well, I think that you know, it's a huge question, and psychology regarding injury is probably one of the areas that I think psychology is most relevant when it comes to performance. I think when other times you've got two types of athlete: the one that needs a pat on the back and the one that needs a good telling off. But I think definitely when you come back from injury, that I personally deal with that in the way that I try and, you know, sort of develop the rehab, and obviously, for instance, a break. You know, you've got to not only build up obviously the strength and the fitness and the change of directions, then start jumping and plyometrics and things like that. But then you've got to start thinking about the contact, and part of that is integrating contact into the rehab scenario so that they become much more akin and much more accustomed to it, and less fearful, and they realise that stimulus doesn't hurt anymore. But we do, you know, Tiz does have somebody that comes down and visits the club, and the players can sort of, you know, sort of chat and debate those issues. As yet, I've not had anybody have a problem returning to sport. In rugby, I have, but you know, there's a lot more contact in that game, and I think that's probably why. But yeah, it's definitely one of the areas where it's most relevant, in my opinion. Like, certainly going back from a traumatic injury like that.